Hello everyone, today I'm going to be showing you how to become a blood priest or a priest of Mohg in Elden Ring. I'll be doing something new today as this is a narrative driven build. After this video will be a short story that I wrote of the blood priest Ezekiel who we are going to be playing as with this build. It's going to be fully narrated. Now you might ask, why would I do this? Well, it's simple because I don't know if I'm the only person that does this, but sometimes as I am playing Elden Ring, I start role-playing in my mind what it is I am, and I went and I put together this sacred spear, and all of a sudden I'm just wandering around killing things in the name of Mohg at first, and I was like, man, this seems pretty entertaining. I wonder if anybody else plays like this, so why not show you guys what I'm doing here? So first off, for Incantations, we are a blood priest, so we are going to use the Dragon Communion Seal as it has a nice arcane scaling. Our other option is Godslayer Seal. We will not use the Erdtree Seal or anything that has to do with the Golden Order simply because it doesn't make sense, as Ezekiel is adamant against the grace of gold. So this is going to follow us into the incantations as well. We're going to utilize all of the Blood Flame incantations. As being a priest of Mohg, Mohg uses two things, fire and blood magic. We will use Flame Grant Me Strength, as this is fine. It just falls into a physical and fire category, nothing crazy, but we will not be using Golden Vow, even though statistically it would be good because of the fact that it represents what Ezekiel is against. So the blood incantations would include Blood Boon, Blood Flame Talons, Blood Flame Blade, Swarm of Flies, and the Furious Blade of Ansbach. For a weapon, we're going to be going Mohg Sacred Spear, as it allows us to invoke blood rituals with its special attack and deal massive damage to enemies, so this will be our weapon of choice. If you want to know why we would have Mohg Spear, check out the story at the end of the build. For armor, we're going to be going with the Sanguine Noble's Robe. Why, you might ask, is this looks the most like a blood priest of Mohg. If I was going to think about what a sanguine priest would kind of look like, I mean, this would be, I guess this would really be it, or the closest thing that Elden Ring currently has. For seals, we'll be using the Lord of Blood's Exaltation. Obviously, this is going to give us a nice attack power boost whenever we make things bleed. We're going to be using the Fire Scorpion Charm because the Sacred Spear is a lot of fire damage as well as bleed damage. So that's going to be pretty solid. Shard of Alexander to help make the Mohg Spear special attack hit even harder. And then the Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman to give us some nice physical damage reduction because we aren't really wearing any heavy armor. And I was debating on the Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman because it seems a little noble, right? But actually, when you look at the flavor text on it, it actually traces back to a time before the Erdtree, back when dragons were in control. So that's not necessarily something Ezekiel would be against. So we want to go with the Fire Shrouded Crack tier and the Opaline Hard tier for our Flask of Wondrous Physick. This is going to give us a nice fire damage boost, and then it's also going to give us a nice 15% damage reduction buff. So that's going to be pretty sweet. The playstyle of this build is very simple. We spam blood attacks on any enemy that comes our way. The Sacred Spear of Mohg's special attack is absolutely nuts. Even though this is a narrative build, you could take out the majority of the bosses in the game with this build, especially if you're only on in the base game. The Elden Beast would be like the biggest thing I think that would give you trouble because it's immune to bleed, but I have absolutely been dominating and crushing with this, even though I'm just sitting here running around going, oh, I'm a priest of Mohg, let's have a good time. Now, when it comes to the Spirit Ash summons, there are actually going to be two that I'm willing to use in this narrative build. The first one's going to be Bloodhound Knight Flow, because I'm going to end up, if I do end up making another short story, I'm going to talk about how you actually end up obtaining those Spirit Ashes and meeting that person. And then the other one is going to be the Dung Eater. And the reason why is because the Dung Eater, while he is not, we don't necessarily see eye to eye, like from a philosophical level, right, of what Ezekiel wants. The Dung Eater just wants like total carnage and madness, right? He's not necessarily against using him, and not only that, Ezekiel can see the amount of carnage that the Dung Eater would bring, that he's really like, even though Ezekiel is not necessarily the most like moral person, obviously being a priest of Mohg, he doesn't want to see that sort of madness take over the world, so he actually gets in bed with Seleuvis to give him the potion, which then turns the Dung Eater into his puppet, and he takes that weapon of madness and destruction and uses it for himself to further his own goals. Alright guys, so I'm experimenting with different video formats, so in this one I'm not going to go and put all the locations, but I do want to know in the comments, do you guys prefer it whenever I make the videos longer and include the locations of each item in the video, because I noticed there's obviously like a little bit of a difference between like, more gameplay if I'm just, showing you guys the items as opposed to showing you where to get the items. So then the video becomes a lot more of like showing you where to get the stuff. So I'm curious to know what you think. Also, let me know what you think about the short story coming up. I genuinely want to know if this was a good idea, bad idea. If you think it's totally dumb, tell me. That's totally fine. I understand. That's the whole point. I just felt like this would be something cool and interesting to try to see if my following would be interested in this. So without further ado, let's hop on into the short story. Enjoy the Book of Ezekiel, Part 1.
Ezekiel came to the lands between in search of something more. In the past lands he was nothing more than a beggar, an outcast, living in the streets. He heard of a mystic land beyond the mist that could give him everything he ever wanted. So he went, but what he found was not what he was looking for. Immediately as he got there, he was savagely attacked by a rune bear. Mangled, disfigured, he was left to die, but as fate might have it, he was reborn. Awoken by something beckoning him, he awoke in a grave confused. As he walked out of this grave, he saw a vast open lands, and in the distance the most radiant golden tree he had ever laid his eyes upon. Surely he had found what he was looking for. A man in a white mask stood outside. This man urged him to try and claim a great rune to prove himself to the round table. The man in the white mask saw that he possessed some talent for incantations, so he taught him some peculiar incantations that at first to Ezekiel was rather grotesque. It infused flame with blood to damage enemies. The incantations were blood boon, blood flame talons, blood flame blade, and swarm of flies. So with these incantations he set out. After fighting his way through Stormvile Castle, he was able to dispatch Godric handedly, thus granting him Godric's great rune. After getting an invite to the round table for this monumental deed, he spoke with the 2 fingers, and what he learned was disheartening. The lands between was exactly the same as his homeland. Instead of the rich and the poor, you had the maiden, and the maidenless, you have the tarnished, and those blessed by grace. He was urged to become Elden Lord, but yet, why? The problems of these lands seemed to be caused by the Elden Lords. The problems of this world were caused by the grace of gold. So why bother? Ezekiel's skepticism of people grew, so he returned to the man that had helped give him the power to claim a great rune. He was expecting to get words that would uplift him, but the man agreed with him. Told him that he just wanted him to see how messed up it all was for himself. He then spoke of a visionary, one that wanted to see this world reborn. Ezekiel was told that he was not yet strong enough, and to travel the lands between in order to get stronger. Only then would he gain an audience with Moog. The man in the white mask granted him robes, as he was a natural with incantations, and a spear to assault his enemies from afar. It also could unleash powerful blood magic. Use these further gifts to become stronger, my child. He traveled the lands between in search of great power, but all Ezekiel found was more sadness. This glorious land of gold was nothing like he had imagined. Death, decay, destruction everywhere, no order. And as he went further and further, he could see what all of these so-called visionaries wanted was power, and it always corrupted them. Rykard was a great example. This glorious man, destroyed by lust for power, to become something perfect. Ezekiel knew what he must do. Destroy Moog and all of these so-called lords. Then let this land plunge into whatever the inhabitants want, good or bad. So Ezekiel went, killing them all. With the power of blood flame, none stood a chance. Rykard fell, Godric fell, and Rodon fell, all will fall. While searching for Melania inside the halig tree, he noticed something interesting. It looked as if something was ripped out of this tree that Melania was guarding. Melania, seemingly beat by some other tarnished, said she was the blade of McCullough, and that McCullough was taken from her, that he must save McCullough, that McCullough wanted to bring upon a world of peace. Ezekiel was immediately skeptical, and let Melania pass, telling her it was all right. He would find McCullough, only not for the reasons Melania wanted. Ezekiel returned to the man in the white mask, requesting an audience with MOHG. At first the man refused, but then gave Ezekiel a test. To invade and kill others, only then would he grant him this audience. Ezekiel, without hesitation, slaughtered multiple tarnished in his forced invasion. In his mind, this was all just to destroy the grace of gold, to bring it all down. All of them were trying to be the next Elden Lord. We could not have that. So Whiteface gave him his audience. Little did Moog know what was to come. So Ezekiel traveled through Moog's domain to meet him in a peculiar place. As he approached Moog, he saw what was behind Moog. A hand grotesquely sticking out of what looked like some type of cocoon-made bark of the halig tree. Moog then went on to proclaim his dynasty was coming, that McCullough was going to help. Ezekiel confused, as McCullough looked deceased, but proceeded to slay Moog without mercy. Ezekiel approached the hand, feeling drawn to it. He touched it, immediately transferred to the realm of shadow. Now Ezekiel roams the land of shadow in search of McCullough to slay him, to stop the never-ending chain of Elden Lords. Thus ends the first book of Ezekiel.
Alrighty guys, well that's going to do it for this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I know this is a little bit different, but anyways guys, like, subscribe if you want to see more, and I will see you next time. Thanks!